Welcome to the Magical Mommy Monday podcast. On this episode, we have Mark from SpecialEdRising.com. Special Ed Rising is a joyful place for sharing, learning, celebrating, and discovery. Mark has over 30 years of experience in special education and ASL. You'll hear more about his background as well as his tips for parents on this episode. You'll also hear just how him and Jen became friends. Be sure to visit SpecialEdRising.com and like Special Ed Rising on Facebook. Enjoy the show. I'm sure everyone will want to hear all about you guys texting Jen and how annoying and funny she is.
It's so funny because I haven't
Absolutely.
talked to another friend of Jen's who texts her as much as I do, except maybe Allie. But Allie and I didn't have this conversation.
We'll have to have her back.
Right.
Jen and I are like, what, a year closer now?
Yes.
And we've,
right.
gosh, this is great.
Yeah.
And I've only known Jen, it's not quite 2 years yet.
No, it'll be 2 years in the summer. That's right.
Before you came on, Mark, I was like, I always get really anxious to talk to your guests because I feel like I won't know what to talk to them about because they're not my people. She's
Right.
like, you have things to talk to them about Mark. He plays the guitar. I'm like, but I don't play the guitar.
You play the drums and sing, and I said, and Mark sings as well.
And then she told me you sang.
Mm-hmm. So you guys can
Very
duet.
exciting.
We can duet. And you can, we can do the White Stripes. You be the drummer.
Oh,
I'll be the guitarist.
Okay, yeah.
But like a really poor version of it. Because I don't play the
Yeah,
guitar.
like the generic version, not
Yes.
the on brand.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
off-white stripes.
Exactly,
The
the
off-white
off-white
stripes.
stripes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, the
I
getting
can't
the
wait for your
sneakers
TikTok,
dirty.
guys.
Yeah.
At Off-White Stripes on TikTok, both of
We're
you.
onto something.
I mean,
We're
now
onto
that I've, put up a TikTok that I have not deleted yet, this is,
This
Oh,
is
wow. You did
exciting.
a TikTok.
And she
'Cause I know that was a
sang,
long time.
I did, I
Mhm.
sang.
Oh,
I
that's
did.
fantastic. Congratulations.
right?
Thank you. Yeah.
Wow.
It might be gone before tomorrow, so I suggest you watch it now before I delete it.
I remember
send you the
early
link.
on in my friendship with Jen, real quick, I was doing, what was it, Jen?
It was a rally.
It was a rally, right?
Yes,
So anyway, so I was going to sing the song, and Jen came and like just being able to calm me because I was with people like really were like professionals and really, they had a background in this stuff, and I'm kind of new to it. So there I was in the middle of all these people, but Jen was like a calming friend to be able to.
That's what I
She,
do.
focus on
she is the best.
Yeah.
Like,
All right,
talk
guys, stop. Okay.
let's
She can't throw up
let's
a gift
talk
here, apparently.
more about her. No, I was having a very first world freak out over having to leave my family and go to Universal Studios last week. Oh my gosh, poor me. And I'm like, Jen, I can't do this. And she's like, just take a deep breath, pack a little more. Like, she is like the most calming influence in my life. You are.
pretty
Jen.
steady.
Are we done talking about me now?
You're just such a good person. We should just spend this episode saying,
Oh
all the
God, I would
things we
hate it
love
so
about
much.
you.
Wow.
Oh God, I would have to go. I would have to go.
It's a great
And then
idea.
never listen back.
Let's bring all the attention onto you. I know you'd really enjoy that.
I'd hate it so much.
You are in the middle of my screen, so it kind of does look like you're the
Ew,
same.
You're the
gross.
star.
Can you change that layout? Why am I in the middle?
No, that's
Yeah.
the way it should be.
Gross. It should never.
love it.
Mark, I guess we should talk to you, Mark, and like interview you or something.
I don't
But
know. I could
either
just
way,
be that guy that just kind of walked by.
that's fine. I mean, that's true.
Um,
Mark, if I had a fancier setup with like one of those machines where you plug mics into, and if we were both fully vaxxed, I'd be like, come on over. 'Cause Mark
Right.
only lives about 5 minutes away. So
I
Right.
mean, I feel
Yeah.
left out because both of you have multiple guitars in your studio.
yeah.
And I'm just like here with the football in the background that literally no one uses. So
But where's your drum set?
sign.
where's my drum set?
Yeah.
I don't have one.
What?
Because if I
You
What do
did
you
should
my
play on?
kid, I don't play right now.
I thought you had one.
I don't. No, I had kids instead. Going through a bit of an acting and an acting and a drumming hiatus at the moment.
Oh, are you really?
You're not in an acting hiatus. You act once a week.
This is true. Anyway, at some point I'll get back to drumming and actually doing theater, but for now,
Yes, that's fantastic.
I get my medical acting fix.
That's really cool.
Mark did some theater too. You guys have so much in common,
Oh my
Angela.
god. You were right.
Many
And we
years
both
many years
bike.
ago. And we both bike
Mhm.
Both
many
bike.
years ago. was the
And
acting
we
for a
sing.
long time.
And Mark boxes, well, not in post-COVID times, but
fitness.
so that's like really close to jujitsu, right? That's like totally the same.
Actually, my husband boxes, and fun story. I did a boxing class because a lot of people at my gym would do like start with boxing and then do jujitsu or vice versa. So I'm like, fine, I'll try this on. And we were jump roping and I peed my pants. And that was my one and only boxing class.
Stop
Wow.
it.
Sure did.
Stop it.
I'm like, go, class is starting. I don't have time to pee. I'm like, you know what? I'll probably be fine. But I forgot that this was my first time jump roping since having 2 kids. So
Yeah,
that's
that'll do it.
That's a different situation.
figured if you've heard about my IUD, Mark, you just hear that story too.
Yeah.
I mean, why not?
I mean, it's open season.
Yeah. It is clearly for this podcast.
No, it doesn't. That stuff doesn't faze me. Be you.
Yeah. But yeah, you box. That's awesome.
So, right. We were talking about that.
Yeah. And I said I wasn't going to make it about me.
I haven't boxed in a year now, but I'm going to be going back soon after the second vaccine. Yeah,
me, Allie, and Mark are counting down to a big group hug.
Oh, I thought you were going to say happy hour, but yeah, group hug.
That too.
Nice.
That too. The hug leading into the happy hour.
Yeah,
and then sitting down. I got it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Mark,
all that goes with that.
Can you tell us about yourself and how you and Jen know each other?
Let's start at the beginning of Mark's life. Do you want to see his prom picture? I can find it.
Absolutely. Let's go that far back.
That's basically the thread that tied us, the 3 of us together, right?
That's true. Yes.
You really wanted to talk about how we met?
I absolutely want to know that.
I want to hear Mark's version of how we met.
There was I think Jen worked for the agency that I worked for about 5 seconds.
Correct.
And
that one. Okay,
right.
Got it.
So there was so our boss threw this party club.
Like a country club.
Like a
it's
country
on
club.
the water. It's like beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely stunning. Mm-hmm. So there I was sitting in a bit of a circle with some people and sitting next to this woman I had never met before. And I turned to her at some point and she looked at me like, yeah, I guess I'll talk to you because I don't know anybody else here. And and
he's already wrong.
I think that's how it
already
happened.
Wrong. Nope.
And but there was kind of like an immediate connection, and I had already known Allie, so that was kind of like a lead-in, I guess, because we ended up walking to the parking lot after the dinner, and Allie's daughter was going to her prom, and I happened to be working with a client who was going to the same prom, and I was going to be his chaperone. So we ended up talking about the prom night and our prom nights, and then Jen showed us pictures of all her prom nights. You went to like 6 of them.
First of all, okay, you are like, this story has gone
were you
off the rails
popular in high
beginning.
school? You were a ton of proms.
No, Miss Homecoming Queen, I was not. Right? It's something she should be proud of. Angela doesn't realize like how big of a deal homecoming queen is. Let me tell you how we actually met. So I was sitting next to Allie. I think Mark was probably sitting on the other side of Allie or something. And then Mark and our boss were talking and I had heard his name and I was like, oh, I think he's working with the girl, like the first family I had gotten to work with. And I was like, oh, I think I recognize his name. Should I talk to people here? Should I do I have to introduce myself? Because I just wanted to stay with Allie the entire time because I was like, I don't know anyone. No one talked to me.
She was your blankie. I get it.
Yes, exactly. And I was like, do I get up? And someone else started talking to her. And I was like, I feel awkward now just sitting here. I guess I'll get up. And then I went over and I was like, hi. And then we started talking. Yeah. And then we went, we walked to the parking lot, the 3 of us, and they were talking about the prom and all that. These pictures of the proms came a little later. We weren't in the parking lot bringing up prom photos.
It wasn't the very, within 2 hours?
Right.
Shocker.
Yeah, right. Anyway,
they weren't in your wallet.
Correct. Not this wallet that I had on me. But just a side note, I did go to 3 proms, just 2 junior, 1 senior.
Too.
See?
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Not bad. Yeah.
So 6 combined. That was close.
6 combined.
Yes.
Yeah. With me and Angela. Anyway, so yeah, that is how Mark and but that night started the group text because I think Allie was confirming the all the prom details and put us in a group, and that group text has been going ever since.
I don't know that we've missed a day, or maybe we've missed a day, but literally from that time forward,
Yeah.
we text each other.
Yeah.
At least one line a day or something.
Yeah, even
like
if it's
just to
like
contact.
happy Saturday.
Wow.
Yeah. Like that's it or something. Yeah.
I don't even know if I've talked to my husband every day. Like that's true
probably
commitment for
have.
friendship.
Yeah.
I do have a question.
I do feel lucky.
Oh, sure.
I think about, Jen meeting a real person, like not an internet
A real person.
I'm an internet person, so it's a little different. Our relationship just kind of slowly blossomed,
Right.
Jen, would you say you're an introvert and extrovert? And then Mark, same question.
Certainly.
Like a combo introvert, extrovert?
No, I'm asking
Or.
Either or.
No, I'm a
Either or.
combo. I'm a
You're
combo.
But which side do you lean more towards?
My gut will say introvert all the time, but then put me in a situation and like, hi, and then I get in my car and I'm like,
So is that you need you can be an extrovert, but then you need downtime to recoup? Is that how it is?
I think I probably prefer downtime, and just being in sweatpants, especially post-pandemic. But I was always, even when I was working in the corporate world, I would come home and in about 0.5 seconds be in my pajamas. Go straight to the
Sounds
room,
amazing.
change on the couch, don't
Yeah.
bother me the rest of the night. Like that's just who I always was. But at work, I would work events, or I would have to be in on meetings and be on all the time. So
but was that hard for you to do? To talk to Mark? Was it hard for you to be like,
yes,
I have to be friends now?
Oh yeah. Oh, I hate it because I am completely nervous. I'm like,
It didn't come across at all, though. I mean, Jen turns on when she has to. I mean, she is very good at it. So
that's so nice. I don't know if
She
that's a
doesn't give
compliment or not.
It's that PR
you
background.
you don't give yourself enough credit. I don't
It
think.
is the PR background.
Yeah. But
Mark,
no,
same question. What about you?
Yes. I am probably more of an extrovert in the sense that I really do like people and I have easy conversations with people. I can pick up conversations and just start talking. So when Jen came up, it was just like, hey, this is cool.
Yeah,
Great.
no, Mark literally, he knows everyone in this area. If you go out with Mark in the village, if you will, if you're out with him, he knows everybody. He knows the bartenders. He knows wait
Great
staff.
start.
He knows people walking by on the sidewalk. Hey, oh yeah, I used to box with them. I used to work with them. I know them from over here. Oh yeah, I ran into them in the grocery store. He literally knows everyone in this area.
So Mark's the person to know. You're a person to know, Mark.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, since the pandemic, I have no idea who that person is anymore. So I am completely cut off. And I just
everyone's like that.
Yeah, but I can't imagine even going back to that life at this point. But I do enjoy people. I do enjoy listening to people's stories and things like that, because you learn from people's experiences. And I think that's really cool. But I do like my own time. I like my downtime. I'm kind of a little bit of a mix, but I do have no issues with talking to people. So,
yeah.
And I think that's part of the work, part of being a teacher. And you were a teacher, right? Or you were
preschool.
Right? Preschool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
It counts.
Well,
You're
teaching only
children.
starts after in kindergarten, correct?
Not really. Yeah.
Right.
No, you're absolutely. That's a difficult job, be a preschool teacher. But being around kids and having to deal with parents and all that kind of stuff, you have no choice, so, but it's kind of in my nature to be outgoing and welcoming to people and try to make them feel as comfortable in different situations as possible. So
I totally get why you and Jen are friends. Makes so much sense. She's exactly the same, Jen. You're I just want to make people feel comfortable. Makes sense. Okay. We should probably talk about what we're going to talk about now.
Right. All right. So Mark, we have you here, as you mentioned, since you
I
have
know.
a little bit, just a couple of years experience in education. How many years would you say that is?
We're broaching 33.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So
How old are
maybe
you?
you know a couple of things. You have more experience than Angela has been alive.
I know. I thought about that today.
Okay, you don't look old enough to have that much experience.
He doesn't
And
no.
I'm a terrible liar, so believe me when I say that.
Thank you. It's
Yeah,
the
terrible poker
the
face.
shakes, right, Jen? It's the spirulina.
It's your beet juice that you drink and your emu oil. Anyway, that's it for another time. Okay. So all right. So let's go back. So you why did you go to school for special education? Was there something that drove you in that direction?
I grew up around my uncle was a paraplegic, so I grew up around him very often. He lived with us for a year at one point, and so that was kind of just like normal to me. Just somebody with a disability didn't really faze me. In one of my first blogs on my website, I wrote about that experience and how the wheelchair was almost like the disability. It wasn't the person. The wheelchair defined the disability, but he didn't. And his half brother, my grandfather married again after my grandmother passed and had a second family, and one of his sons is deaf. And so I grew up around him, but I didn't know any sign language. I'd see him maybe once or twice a year. And he kind of was just quiet off in a corner. And, I'd watch his family who tried to communicate with him sign a little bit or just yell really loud, as if that was going to make the computer hear. It's just like, it's like, he's not going to hear you. Anyway, I didn't understand it until I got involved in the world of deaf culture and deafness and teaching at the school for the deaf that he actually went to when he was in elementary school. So that was a really interesting, never even knew where the school was. And I ended up working there for 30 years. And so that became a home for a long time. And so that was my original exposure to disabilities. And so I guess it gets in the back of your mind, and then I actually worked in PR for about 5 minutes also back in 88. And that's 1988. Not
the year before I was born. I'm sorry, I had to throw that
No,
in.
it's
So
fine.
mean.
It's fine. I think it's great. I embrace age. It's okay. Choice to have.
It's because you look young.
Yes, exactly.
So I was in PR for a minute, and I remember I used to get out off the train like 6 blocks from my job just to walk before, because I didn't like the job. And I would pass the school every day, and I just felt compelled to the school, and left the job after 3 months and thought I might go into teaching. No idea, no background in it at all. And I just reached out to this school that I ended up working in for 30 years just to see if I could volunteer, just to see what it was like. And I got into a sign language class literally like the next week. And I was hired as an assistant with about 5 hours of sign language under my belt at that point.
Wow.
But it was a total communication philosophy at the school. So it was like voice and sign and pictures, any which way you could communicate. So I learned on the job and got my master's, and I ended up becoming a teacher there.
I can imagine that was the best way to learn. I took 3 semesters of sign language.
Wow.
And our teacher, she was deaf. And I found that I probably learned more in ASL club than the actual classes, just because you're more immersed in it.
Absolutely.
And it's such a shame because, I'm not in the club, I'm not doing the classes, and I've lost almost all of it. I mean, I've taught my kids what I know, right. But if you're not using it, if you're not exposed to it as constantly as, you were, even with 5 hours under your belt, you lose it.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, you have to immerse. It's like going to another country to learn another language. So
exactly.
The school was the country, the deaf culture experience was there. And fortunately now I work with a little boy's, it's going to be 3, and his parents are both deaf. And so I still get to use the sign language, whereas when I left my job, there was really no reason to. So I'm grateful because it's an opportunity to keep up my chops,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love the language is what really drew me to the job. It wasn't even the special education at that point. It was really the ASL that drew me to it. And then the special ed kind of became something that I learned more about and fell in love with the population. And the kids have just been amazing and changed my life, so it's been great.
Do you feel like over the course of your career, it's been less ASL with, the invention of cochlear implants?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. That it was to watch. I was there. There was a kind of a revolution back in the late 80s at Gallaudet University, where they had the first deaf president, and they demanded the first deaf president. And that's just around the time I got involved, So I watched the evolution from the total communication to a full-on, it's called bye-bye program, bilingual, bicultural. So you're supposed to coexist English and sign language, American Sign Language simultaneously. And it was never really done right. But for a long time in the 90s, we were basically immersed in American Sign Language. There was no speaking going on whatsoever. It was just sign language, which was awesome. Pros and cons to everything. People that were older and didn't have the sign had to leave their jobs. So it was conflict, and that always is going to exist with change. But then new administration came in with very little experience or no experience in deaf education. They were more special ed. And the school has gone, because of the cochlear implants, that's what they kind of went with the trends. And so the school became like more of the preschool is an LSL program. It's called Listening and Spoken Language. So there's no sign language exposure whatsoever. And so what I watched as this change was happening was kind of like the genocide of the deaf culture as the deaf were looking at it. That's how they kind of defined it. And, it was difficult because you watched these people who were, fully immersed in the deaf culture, and they don't consider themselves disabled. They just don't hear. It doesn't bother them. They have these fully rich lives if they want. And they didn't see it as anything that needed to be fixed. So when the cochlear implants came, there was quite a revolution that went on there too. And but the technology and the popularity of the technology, because people feel like who wouldn't want to hear if you have the opportunity, So that was what was pushed. And so that's where they are now. It's really heavier onto the spoken, the oral, auditory communication with the younger kids. And I know that the school, since I left, has gone back to total communication. That's where the world stands.
I remember just in my classes and learning from my professor that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that, the deaf culture, they see it as, like you said, something that it doesn't really, affect their lives in any way. They see it, deaf culture as something more beautiful.
Absolutely.
But there seems to be a little bit of a divide between calling people deaf people or people who are hard of hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And which do you think, like, what do you think it should be? What's the proper term?
Well, it's everybody's got their opinions about this stuff. I mean, deafness encompasses so many degrees and levels of hearing, so there's people who are profoundly deaf and there's people who are mildly deaf and everything in between. So certainly I noticed prejudices even within the deaf culture for people who are hard of hearing, who tried to, there's a sign for hearing, which is like you take your index finger and it's kind of like a circular roll out from your mouth. And when they refer to somebody who was hard of hearing, not fully being part of deaf culture, they would sign it up near your heads, like you think like a hearing person. And so that was, a struggle for people who were hard of hearing that I knew and was friends with. They kind of felt like they didn't know what world they belonged to. They weren't quite in the hearing, they weren't quite in the deaf. It was just fascinating to watch all the different ways this could be interpreted, and so for me, I feel like I grew up in watching deaf culture. So I grew up exposed to that, and I could see the richness of it and the beauty of it. And I actually taught it as an adjunct. I taught deaf culture for a few semesters. I really feel like if that can exist, I fully support that. I don't judge anybody who goes through cochlear implants. They work, and who am I to deny someone that? But if you choose that you want sign language, I don't think there's nothing wrong with that. It's not abuse. Some people might think of it as an abuse. Like, why would you not allow your child to hear if they could, And now I've been out of it for 3 years. So I kind of I've not really been paying so much attention to what's happening inside the culture at this point. And the people that are the parents that I work with who are deaf, they're not really so immersed in the deaf culture themselves. They're parents, they're working hard,
Right.
and they have a little boy and that's their life at this point. So my feelings about it are just kind of like whatever works for the individual. But I always just say, at least inform about both sides. And I never felt like that was getting enough attention, the American Sign Language over the cochlear implant push,
Yeah.
But but I don't knock anybody.
I never even thought of that, people would see that as abuse of, oh, well, you're not doing this and you're just going to stay with sign language. That's interesting.
Yeah, that was one of the many things that came up that just
Mhm.
don't think about. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's hard for parents because when you're born with a child of any disability, you have no idea what that world is about,
Mhm.
and you just want to fix,
Yeah.
and that's what everybody wants to do is fix.
Mhm.
And really for me, it's more about, this whole mindfulness component that I like to try to weave into my blogs. Accepting child for who they are and trying to raise that person and not the person that you want them to be, because they're not
Mhm.
yours.
Mhm.
And so I feel like that's something that I would like to see catch on more, and take the onus off parents too. It's a lot of pressure, right? I'm not a parent. You guys are parents. You know what it's like, just to be able to forgive yourself for not knowing everything,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's a really hard job. And I feel like I had the opportunity as a teacher because a lot of these kids came from broken homes, or maybe they were foster care kids, or maybe they had one parent. So as one of the few male role models, I had the opportunity to kind of feel what that was like to go beyond, in those type of environments, the way the school used to be earlier on too. It was a lot more personable,
Mhm.
there weren't the same kind of curriculum standards that there are now. So there was ways to kind of like reach into a person's life that touched them on a more personal level.
Mhm.
Parents, dealing with very, very difficult issues of behaviors, et cetera. And so that's the stuff that I kind of like latched onto and really fell in love with. And that's what I still enjoy doing. It's just a wonderful thing to be able to see the kids overcome. But it's also a great thing now to see the parents overcome,
Mhm.
because I wasn't on that side, but now I go into the homes, or will be
Mhm.
again soon, to now see what it's like on an everyday basis, what the families have to go through. So that's kind of where my focus is at this point, to try to, help them get their life in some sort of order that makes it livable
Mhm.
and allows them to de-stress a little bit.
Yeah. Can you talk more about what your current role is?
I work with an agency now, and so I work with students still. Before the pandemic, I was working with kids on the spectrum who were mid to late teens and still had a couple of early intervention kids that I was working with. I'm trying to move away from that more and get more into just parent training and parent consulting. That's really where I want to go at this point. I love the kids, and I still feel like I can be effective with them and interact with them still, but work with the parents, because I think that's like, that's the place you need to work on,
Mhm.
right? And because if the parents don't have it together and they're not really quite sure what to do, the kids are going to suffer as a result. So I feel like that's the focus for me at this point. That's the interest that I have, and it's always with behavior management in mind.
I think not a lot of people realize. I think even parents that I know of that have children with disabilities, they don't even realize as they start learning more or learning about early intervention, or if they're starting to get them evaluated for different things, they don't even realize parent training exists. And I think it's amazing that it does. And I think it's, so great that that is available. Can you talk through what parent training, because it probably also sounds pretty funny to a lot of people too.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? Like, you're training parents for so can you talk through what that may look like?
Just to exist in their bubble.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Parent training it's a new experience for me in the past couple of years. I've been training myself in a
Yeah.
sense. And I've had the opportunity to work closely with a couple of families. So basically the idea of training parents, because the thing is, a lot of the kids, they don't have the direction at home, and the parents are overwhelmed by the fact that these kids don't have skills like life skills and daily living skills, and they don't know how to actually go about doing that. So in a way, I can come in and I can try to help organize that for them, set up routines using schedules and calendars, and with behavior training, working on things like social stories to be able to inform the children before something happens, that might cause some anxiety in their life and stress, to be able to educate them through their own kind of personal experiences, using photos of them within the social stories, etc. Even cartoons, they're kind of sequenced. So creating expectations. I hate the word expectations, really. Creating routines for these kids where they know what's going to be coming next. And for the parents, that reduces a lot of stress because they know what's coming next as well. And, there's so many different types of aspects to it, like with the behavior training, active ignoring, being attentive, but ignoring some of the behaviors, and allowing your child to be able to whatever the best of their ability, whatever their ability level is, communicate in their way. Whether it's through sign language, whether it's through a communication device, an iPad, whatever it is, PEC system, where they're pointing to different pictures, really establishing the communication basis for them, that language that they're going to use, that's going to set the children up for success. And so with my approach, the mindful parenting approach that I'm trying to instill into my work now, is to allow parents to kind of like take that break, that space between stimulus and response, right? It's that moment where you can take a breath and not knee-jerk react and not react emotionally, where you can make a choice about how you want to approach the situation. And that will then lead towards helping to develop a better relationship with your child, whether you have a typical functioning child or a special needs child, right? You want to recognize their humanity. You want to recognize your humanity. You want to be able to understand your triggers. You want to be able to understand their triggers. It's a lot to go into in this short amount of time, but by understanding those types of triggers, if you know what sets you off, you can work with it to try to like fix it to the degrees where it's not going to be that knee jerk, right? And that space is where growth happens, right? So in that space where we take that moment to think and how we want to respond. It's funny because I'm not a parent, but my parents are elderly and I've been taking care of them a lot in the past year. And I know my triggers, and something is said or whatever, and I know I can just go from 0 to 90 in my head, but you have to manage it. And that's how I can finally kind of relate to what it's like to be a parent, because I do have that to call upon. So I can bring that. Parents have a lot of anxieties, and how do they deal with those emotions? And getting parents to understand that their feelings just happen to them and that they don't have control over them. It's really what you do with that, right? And to cut yourself a break, forgive yourself, be compassionate with you, be compassionate with your child. I know you guys have talked, you had a whole episode on anxiety, and
us. We're fine. You mean
we're totally good. Especially me.
Not here.
Take like a big chewable pill.
Prozac is the best.
It really is. I had my own anxiety event about 7 years ago, and that taught me the biggest lessons of my life when it came to dealing with the kids, because especially the kids on the spectrum, or the kids with stress, anxieties, disorders. And so to know what it was kind of like to feel your body react a certain way that you had no idea, right? You had no control over, and like, what is that? And your body just does these things. And, so it freaks you out because you don't know what it is, and it snowballs. So that's about getting a handle on that. But having that insight really allowed me to have insight and to be able to connect with the students in a way that I'd never done for so many years prior to it. And it just gave me the knowledge of step back, take a moment, don't react to what's going on, listen to them, talk to them, see what's going on for them, and allow them to be part of the process, to whatever degree they can be. And that to me was the greatest education I've gotten, I think. And so I try to make parents aware of that and use my vulnerability to make their vulnerability a little bit more comfortable.
On that note, I think it's really difficult, for more difficult than I have really realized over the years, for a human to put themselves in another person's shoes. And being able to do that really shows your compassion for the people you work with and the kids and the families you work with. And it's only made you a better provider to them. And I also wanted to stress the importance of your approach. I mean, right now there's so many kids being temporarily left at ERs because of,
Mhm.
caregiver fatigue,
Right.
because of, behavioral issues. I'm getting all tongue tied now.
No, it's
Thanks,
okay.
Jen. You passed it on to me. Anyway, parents are getting so stressed out and they have this, caregiver fatigue. They don't know what to do. They don't know that they have resources yet.
Exactly.
And so they just drop their kids off at the ER, and it's not because they're bad parents. They don't know what to do. Then it's filling up beds and then don't know where to place the child. And it's just kind of, snowballs, doesn't it?
Right.
But by being able to have these strategies in how to, not only, just tips for dealing with their children and strategies and different things that would help
Right.
them. But also to, that mindfulness to deal with their own emotions. It's just so important. I can't stress that enough.
I agree. It's like, realizing that you're just as important,
Mhm.
and that
Yeah.
your feelings and if you're not healthy in your head, you're
Right.
not going to be good for your child, right?
Mhm.
And I say this all with, we're all fallible, and it's never going to be perfect. We're always going to fall down, but to keep it in mind, and the more we do it, the more it becomes second nature, and then the job of parenting and teaching and caregiving becomes easier in a sense, because now you've got this flow. I refer to it like when you have a good behavior management system, it just takes over. At the beginning, it's the work, right? It's always the work at the beginning to establish. But once it's established, then it just kind of like, it just goes. It's like becomes a machine,
Yeah.
if as long as you're consistent with it, But and you mentioned resources, and that's also part of my job too, is to inform parents of what their resources are, because a lot of people don't know their rights, and they don't know what their kids are able to access through their districts and things like that, free services. So they don't have to pay out of pocket, so it doesn't stress them in that way financially. So there's that aspect too, which is really, really important in transitioning after high school. Things, all these things that are like overwhelming for parents, because it never really seems to end. Once you start, you're on this ride, and so to be there to try to be of any kind of help in that regard, to educate them. I mean, you can see it in their faces, and just over time, the way they talk, you just see they're calmer. They're able to talk more about the actual strategies that you've been talking about, and incorporating them into their lives, and they're seeing the success with it, and that's the greatest satisfaction, right?
Yeah. Well, so you have a list of parent strategies, which I think we might need to share on social media. We'll
Oh,
be doing that. So just to
that'd
let
be
you
great.
know, we'll
Thank you.
talk about it.
It's on my
But
website too. I have it on my
yes,
website as well. Yes.
which we're talking about next. Actually, thanks for the segue. But one of the things on your list is create sensory areas. Obviously, this is a favorite of mine.
Yes.
And I also feel, though, that I don't know if it's something maybe I wasn't noticing a few years ago, but I feel like recently there are more things available in like Target or wherever that are geared towards creating these sensory spaces for your kids. I mean, I picked up two things in the dollar section of Target, my favorite spot.
That's your favorite
Ooh,
store.
Yeah.
what'd you get?
So I got these dice. They're like 3 dice.
Oh,
and
I bought that after
Oh,
you
you
did.
did? Okay,
Because I saw you posted it.
because I posted it.
And so then
I'm an
went and bought it.
influencer.
You're you
You are.
influenced me.
Right. And like on each dice, it'll say like a time, like 20 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever. On another one, it might say frog jumps. On another one, it may say, hop on 1 foot or whatever. And you roll the dice and you do it for that amount of time. And it keeps the kids busy forever, but it's getting some of that energy out. There's
Yes.
also like, the foam mats that you can kind of put together like a puzzle, and it'll just kind of have different yoga poses or workouts. There's, calming areas with bookmarks that you can set up in a corner of your house or your classroom. And the bookmarks talk about taking deep breaths and relaxing. And I just feel like there's more of this available, almost as if there's more knowledge in the world. Even in schools, they're creating, these sensory paths to get the kids out in the hallways and kind of just jump around a little bit and zigzag and do wall push-ups. And I know that I have used that at home with my own kids, and I see if they're getting antsy. And I think it's also maybe even within this pandemic, and there's more distance learning happening, and you're seeing that kids don't need to sit in a chair for the
Right.
entire time in order to learn. They can play with a fidget or
Mhm.
stand up, or maybe they just need to rock from side to side for a little bit, whatever it is, but they're focused and they're still engaged, but they're
Absolutely.
not sitting with their hands crossed at a desk. And I think it's great to see more of this come to light.
Mhm.
So I'm just rambling at this point.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, please do.
Ramble, but,
You're the guest, Mark.
no. I was going to say that's more about the teacher, right? Wanting them to sit and have their hands folded. That's about the teacher. It's not about the student.
Right.
So it's funny because the last few years that I was in the classroom, I started to look at ways for kids to be comfortable and learn. So if you weren't going to be comfortable sitting in a chair, and I had one student who was just like, there's no way, it was going to take him a long time. And it took a couple of years before he could sit in a chair calmly and really pay attention. If you wanted to stand, I literally had a life skills area where I'd set up a bedroom. So we actually literally had a bed in the corner. He would lay on the bed and I would teach at the board, and
oh my gosh.
he would communicate and he would answer my questions and be participating from the bed. He was happy as could be, and he got it more out of it than I had if I had asked him to sit in a chair.
Yeah.
So anyway, get it to work. It's not about forcing your will on this child. Find out where your child is comfortable, and what works for them. And that's where I think education needs to diversify more and be more open to that stuff. And the sensory aspect is something that's I've always dealt with, but even gotten more and more involved in going into the homes and seeing the importance of it there. And I had the good fortune of working with one mom who wanted to develop her basement into her son's area, and he's like 19 years old. And so we created a sensory board for him to do with fidgets and lights and mirrors and fans and all these things and different textures to touch, and a crash pad with big foam, and we filled up sheets, and he had this big crash pad to go on, and he loves it, and weighted blankets. And I painted a mural on his wall of the two things that he loves to do: horseback ride and go surfing. So I created this mural for him to be able to interact with. And so I've had this opportunity to see how that has helped him. And he was somebody who was just jumping out of his skin, really, really difficult for him to stay calm. And he now uses that area. I haven't seen him. I haven't worked with him since the pandemic, and I'm about to go back in a little while to him next month, and just to see how it's transformed. But the things I'm hearing about him, because I still work with his mom, it's just an amazing transformation, and just creating that space for him to know that's where he can go, and that gives parents freedom too. They know they're safe, and it gives the parents have to be able to find the time, even if it's like go to the bathroom and breathe for 20 minutes, that's your time. Put some music on and headphones, whatever, and just get that space, so I deal with that kind of stuff too, trying to help find alternatives for them. So
that's awesome. Can you tell us, you've mentioned your blog a little bit, but can you tell us more about specialedrising.com?
Yeah, specialedrising.com was just an opportunity for me to kind of, I don't want to, I mean, there's experts, there's PhDs, there's all these people out there, and I am not one of them, right? I am just somebody who has this experience from teaching, my life experiences through teaching, and I just want to share what I know. So the blog became a place to kind of celebrate special needs, celebrate the families, celebrate the kids, and it's a way for me to alternatively talk about some of my experiences, stories, talk about different subject matters, different strategies, shared blogs that work with different strategies, and whether it be sensory, whether it be behavioral, different topics. And also a place where I want people to, I have a community page where I'm hoping that people will share their own stories, because I'd love to be able to just get this more of a real positive picture out there. These are some of the most positively impactful people I've ever met in my life. And I always thought for all these years, teaching that was my last year. 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 Right. And I finally learned I finally learned that it was just like maybe the greatest thing that could have ever happened to me. And I would not change it for the world. So the blog is information sharing, celebration. I'm available to consult if you want to talk to me one-to-one. So I have a page for that, consult page. I actually want to start playing some music for kids and puts like a music page up there. And so that's pretty much what the site is at this point. And it's always,
evolving.
Yeah, It's fluid, but I'm enjoying it. I had no idea if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have known how to set it up.
Does Special Ed Rising have any social media like Facebook or Twitter, Instagram?
Yeah, so I do have a Facebook page, and Special Ed Rising is there. And you could just go to my website, specialedrising.com, which has a connection to a platform called Talk Time, where you could hire me to consult, or we could just do it through, if anybody's interested, just do it through the website itself, just to contact me directly.
Thank Mark for making time to be on our show tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was so nice getting to know you, and we'll definitely have to TikTok and do a duet or something.
It'd be fantastic.
Sure.
I would love to do that. Yeah.
And maybe we'll have to have you and Allie on one time, and then we can all hang out.
Yeah. Allie and I actually, we share a student now for the first time.
I know. It's so exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's been a pleasure. It's been a dream come true. I listen to you guys every Monday. It started out just supporting my friend Jen, but I've really grown to appreciate what you guys bring to the table, because you really do bring up topics that are difficult for people to talk about, and when you have the Disney stuff, I listen to learn.
Oh yeah, we didn't get to give you any crap.
I zone out a little bit.
Mark has never been to Disney, and you know what? I said we were going to give him crap. We'll have to save that for the next episode, because we don't even have time for the amount of crap we have to give.
So are we planning a trip with Allie and Mark then? Is that?
Yes, we need to put that on that's on the incredibly long list of trips I need to be taking. That's one of them.
Yeah, that's probably way low on your list.
Yeah. We'll start with May with Frank then.
Yeah, but thank you, Mark, for being on.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you're having a great day, night, whatever you're doing, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.